Hello and welcome to The People's AI, presented by Gensyn. I'm your host, Jeff Wilser, and today we'll be covering one of the juiciest topics in all of the AI space. That would be, of course, AI agents. And we're gonna have some fun here. We're gonna explore what the future would look like with AI agents. Put simply, how will AI agents change the world, change how you live, work, and play? I'm proud to partner with Gensyn to bring you season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. Gensyn's building the network for machine intelligence. That includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every capable computer or device on the planet. And today, I am delighted to welcome to the show two of the top builders in the world of AI. Shaw Walters, the founder of Eliza Labs, who is, of course, at the tip of the spear in building AI agents. Eliza is creating the operating system for AI agents, and Shaw is widely recognized as one of the most important voices in this booming field. And I'm delighted to be joined by Harry Grieve, the co-founder of Gensyn. Harry is working to build infrastructure that will allow all of these AI agents to flourish, and in a way that's decentralized, verified, and trusted. So honestly, in the last couple of years covering this space for CoinDesk, I have had a ton of conversations about AI agents. This is easily one of my favorites. My pet theory is that, yes, while everyone's talking about AI agents, somehow, weirdly, we're not talking enough about the future, about what the impacts will be. Despite all the hype, or maybe even underappreciating just how profound a change these agents will bring. So today, Harry, Shaw, and I spend a good chunk of time contemplating what the world will look like in, say, the 2030s when AI agents are fully mainstream. What does your average Tuesday look like when you have these agents at your beck and call? We have some theories. And what are the philosophical, ethical questions that we'll have to tackle? And what are the tech challenges we need to conquer before this reality becomes true? We cover that as well. I think anyone who's the slightest bit interested in AI agents will find a ton of great nuggets here from Shaw and Harry. I had a blast. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Shaw Walters, founder of Eliza Labs, and Harry Grieve, co-founder of Gensyn. Harry and Shaw, welcome to The People's AI.
Great to be here.
So thrilled to have you both. Let's jump right into AI agents use cases. We're obviously in the earliest days, and this is all still pretty speculative, but what the hell? Let's speculate. What are you guys excited about as the biggest use cases of AI agents? Shaw, kick it off.
I mean, let's just go back to ChatGPT. I mean, we can make an argument of what makes any of the things that I do or any of us do different than ChatGPT. That's maybe separate. But first, let's talk about ChatGPT. And what's interesting about them is that there is not a single vertical or use case that dominates what people use ChatGPT for. It's not a single one that's more than 5% of what the people are using it for that. And there's probably a top 10 or top 20 and then a very, very long tail of use cases. So this is a unique technology where before it was okay, well, I make a product that does this thing. Whereas AI, writ large is okay, well, what is your problem? I'll just solve it for you. And so I think where we're all going with agents is taking that and just extrapolating it to capability. So ChatGPT kind of represents the ideal of intelligence. It can really think about anything. And then if you give it a bunch of tools, now it can start to do a bunch of stuff. And so what do you want it to do? I think that actually there's, we've been asking this question a lot and working on agents that can kind of start to build their own plugins and sort of self-grow to be what people need. It auto-generates a latent workflow or a plugin for the agent. And what we found is a lot of people are just I don't even, I'm not even sure. But once you start giving them ideas, they're oh yeah, I could automate this in my life. I could do that. Yeah. I really hate having to go to my email every day and delete 20 emails. Why isn't that automatable? But they're all small bespoke problems that are sort of unique to you. Everyone has that email problem, but you have your Gmail client, I have my email client. It's kind of a mess. And so what we're seeing with AI now is like systems that kind of gloss over that and can solve a lot of the like complicated issues of building these sort of bespoke solutions to people's problems. So.
I love the analogy of ChatGPT because you're right. If 2.5 years ago we were to grill OpenAI, what are the main use cases of ChatGPT? Like, to your point, like everything. there's 100. Harry, how about yourself?
I think the most promising kind of up and coming use case is the displacement of business ownership specifically. So the idea that an agent currently is used in a sort of, it augments a human in many cases, and a lot of the kind of great work that Shaw's doing is expanding it to be fully automatic, where it's kind of sort of self-correcting or changing its own reward functions or building its own adapters. And I think like the kind of natural extension of all of that is its ability to be completely autonomous as like an economic entity. I think that in the kind of the real world with like kind of, like atoms, people, it's hard to like start companies up just from a administrative perspective. Crypto offers a pretty kind of unique substrate for doing that, not least because of, the kind of, I guess, like protocols that already exist for spinning up collective governance institutions where people can kind of own rights to things, but also just with the emerging kind of stablecoin legislation in places where it's just making trade in a kind of crypto native way easier. I think the kind of jump from a machine which is either augmenting or completely automating existing parts of white collar work, taking the next step to then actually just doing the kind of like entrepreneurship part of that stack is like not actually that big a jump, to be honest. Particularly
so
for
saying not even CEOs are safe. If you're a CEO, your job is not safe. Like
I honestly, I don't think it's safe.
Well, maybe a better question than what will AI agents be doing is what will they not be doing, right? Because it's even like just a very crude, simple example of this podcast production flow, right? I use AI plenty now to help in various aspects of post-production of the podcast and all that stuff, but it will not be long before the AI agent is, I'm basically, there's one AI agent overseeing other sub AI agents that are all working to go from, after we finish this call, I press a button and the agents do all the editing, all the post-production, they spit out show notes, they clip things for social. That world is coming soon, right? And if that workflow of this podcast gets so automated, it's easy to imagine virtually all kind of knowledge work having similar levels of automation. I want to explore what that will mean in a bit, but Shaw, you mentioned something about self-coding agents. That feels like a pretty important inflection point, is the word you use off mic. Talk a bit more about self-coding agents, what you're seeing right now, and where that's headed. I think it's kind of a good bridge of where we are now to where we're going in the future. If this is the classic robots building robots world almost before our very eyes.
Yeah, I mean, we found there's a thing called ArcAGI. And we found that the current large language models are not particularly good at it one shot, but if they kind of bang on it long enough, they actually get about 85% of them right and actually do better than most humans, given enough compute and time, like quite a lot of money in compute. But it kind of showed like, okay, if we just sort of have some sort of ground truth that we can validate against, then the agent can sort of just go there and bash on this problem until it's like written the code right. And so the ground truth that we have in programming is the actual action itself. Like if I want to send an email and the email is actually sent and I have a way to verify that. So we've been doing a lot of, it's like, okay, well, what's the most like on rails Disneyland experience of coding agents? In that, like, all of the rules for types and linting and how the thing is structured is extremely structured and fixed. And then within the rails of like, you are building a plugin for the agent and this is how it works. Well, what are you building? You're building an adapter to some network. Okay, cool. Then we have that like you just build that one part and test it and add unit tests for it, and then go to the user and say, okay, now give me a real API key, and then give like a POC test, and I can basically use the user as a ground truth, and I have like these like actual tests and actual APIs to do this. And so a year ago, we were all trying this. There was like Auto GPT was very popular. There's a whole bunch of these, and they just did not work. Like it just didn't. It just didn't. It was a cool idea, you know.
For 5 minutes, it seems awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like, we now have models. Gemini 2.5 is just getting there, but Claude is like, I spent so much money on Claude. It's crazy. It's the most expensive model, but it really, really generates working code. Not the first time always, but on Rails within the context we've given it with a crap ton of like instruction and context, it works pretty well. And so we were going from like having a community that had to come and write all these plugins, and it was very painstaking to maintain, to like, just don't worry about it. Like the AI does the plugins. You guys just go review it, make sure it's good. It's really like we were going from maintaining, every plugin was quite a lot to maintain, to like each of our devs now is cranking out, upgrading the plugins to the new stack, and then adding new capability. And so what we've done is we've actually moved into building a platform now where you can just go and type in what you want an agent to do, and the agent will, usually do it. 100% would be ideal. But I think that we're just getting, like, I'd say this last generation of models is just the point where like it's good enough to pull that off. Again, I would not say like, oh yeah, it'll just write you an app, no problem, dude.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet. But within the context, it is quite incredibly impressive. And certainly my own flow. I've been a programmer forever, and I'm an old man now, I feel like, at least in tech. But, it was like, man, just bashing my head against things, looking up Stack Overflow all night. And now I barely code. I honestly, I just read what it's doing.
Vibe coding it's a real thing, right?
Yeah. I'm like really, it feels like babysitting. Like you gotta watch. You can't just let it go. You gotta like keep your eyes on it. But man, it really rips. So
I think like the community is quite split on Stack Overflow. I think people's experiences varied with the how prickly that community could be historically, particularly if you're trying to learn things. Yeah. So
Harry, so you come at this more from the infrastructure side. What in your mind are like the key things that have to happen from an infrastructure perspective before we get to this kind of like where the agents are truly at scale in this like fully matured way?
Yeah, I think it dovetails with the previous question around kind of what wouldn't you want an agent to do, and kind of what are the like things that maybe you might subordinate an agent under a human for. And most of it comes down to things which require A, human empathy, or B, trust. And I think that the human empathy one's like hard to like square, because there's just some things that like I think a human would intrinsically struggle to trust a machine with. I don't think there's many things. The one which always comes up to me are like anything which touch like like moral philosophy. So like I feel like a human is probably just less likely to accept the kind of determination to like a question like the trolley problem from a machine than they are like another human. Like, so that's just kind of an aside. But the second point around trust also just relates to like, do you trust the results? And I think that requires verification. And I think that verification of the results basically occurs at the compute level. So if you can maybe, even if something feels correct at the model level and you can kind of eyeball it and say, yeah, that answer sounds right, actually understanding that the model which even produced the answer you're looking at was indeed the model that you thought it was is also a kind of question. And to kind of arbitrate that, you need to have a system in place that can look at the compute as it was executed right down at the silicon and make sure that it was done as requested. That's what at the infrastructure level we started with at Gensyn, where we're building the network for machine intelligence, essentially all the infrastructural components required for people to build frameworks, to build agents, to build this whole new economy on top of. The verification that we're building enables someone to submit an arbitrary machine learning model for inference or for training, and for it to be executed faithfully in a way where the kind of game theoretic outcome, like the Nash equilibrium, is moved to nobody cheating about the work. That's point one. So the verification piece. The second piece is basically just like the horizontal scale required. Obviously, if you want a world where you've kind of grown this entirely new economy with lots of different actors in it, and all those actors require compute, you need to horizontally scale the compute in a very large way. That it requires many things, from like the coordination of that compute to being able to like fully optimize and how you execute on a device. But like crucially, it requires communication between the devices, and there's been a lot of recent work from teams like ours and others around how do you basically reduce the amount of communication required between all these devices, number one, and then number two, ensure that the kind of results are optimal, given the fact that you're not sharing much. We recently launched a paper called No Loco, which deals with that by removing the need for all reduces between certain steps in a decentralized trading process. But there's so much more to do. So basically verification and communication are the two like big like pillars, I think, and they underpin this whole new economy.
Yeah. And Shaw, from your perspective, kind of more on the app side, tip of the spear, what would you say is kind of holding us back, or what are kind of like the main tech hurdles that have to be crossed before this truly materializes in the way that we'll be exploring in a bit, in the kind of like future world where the AI agent is doing all of my white collar work, and to Harry's point, is replacing CEOs? What's left to be done?
At this point, to me, it seems all quite solvable, but there's like a lot of mundane engineering challenges. I do agree. Trust is like the hardest thing. And trust is like there's so many different dimensions to it. I need my agent to not get scammed. I need it to be able to do the things that I want it to do and not think that it's doing the things that I want it to do. Because even if it's, thinks that it's doing the right thing, it hallucinates a lot. Still, I need my agents to be able to hire other agents. A lot of what we're doing now is like, can we have one PM agent that pulls in other agents, and it's spinning them all up itself. But eventually, you'll start to see swarms of like decentralized swarms where you have agents that are hiring other agents that are not like from the same operator. So trust is like a really big problem for us. We have I've been working on this like trust module, right? And like, how do we do trust? How do we quantify it? And there's, there's some actions that like I want like a soft trust where like that guy, just a nice guy, like I'll let him do that. Like he's been a great community member. I'll let him have some limited access to like
limited for me. It should be very limited trust.
yeah.
Trust
so there's this like. Yeah,
Yes.
there's like kind of there's soft trust, right? Where like we want to get to, as we like see someone is performing well in our community, we can unlock things for them, right? But there's also like roles, like I don't know this guy, but he's my boss, so I'm just gonna do what he tells me anyway. I don't like trust my boss. I just do what my boss told me to do. And then there's like, how do you trust the agent, right? Like this is the verification. There's got to be some sort of meritocracy. Like, I'm about to give this agent money to do this thing. I'm going to give it my API keys. Like that seems like probably the biggest risk factor, and probably a space where we need to think about like, how do we do authorization. I have some friends over at Flashbots who've been looking at like, instead of me giving you my credentials, how do you actually come and ask me to send something through my account, basically. And there was a thing called Solid Pods from Tim Berners-Lee a while back that tried this, but this is like an unsolved problem. So I think this is the stuff where like, look, I can make an AI agent like run a workflow or send a transaction. That's easy. Getting it to do it in a room of like 1,000 people for the right people at the right time without like getting messed up or hacked or scammed or anything. Like there's a lot of just gotchas in there.
It's almost like, as I hear you describing this, Shaw, it's almost like the task at hand for those building agents and figuring out the AI agent ecosystem is almost replicating all of society and all of the norms and laws and customs and rules and economic policies and currency. It's like, we need to figure out how to redo all of society, all of civilization, all of humanity in this digital agents world. That is not a small feat.
I actually think that it's interesting. It's that we don't have to redo it. We just have to quantify it. Like if I can quantify something into a systematic process, then okay, maybe the AI is not perfect, but like it will give you a result, right? Like I can definitely make like an AI CEO if I have the right inputs. Now, is it a good CEO is a question, but like the fact that I can make it. But the challenge is that I have to quantify what a CEO is and what a CEO does and what my values for that CEO are, what I think is actually a good CEO and a bad CEO. And if I can do all of that and like build that out into a very systematic, like very clear steps, this is the process, and I can just spend endless compute running that over like all of our conversations and everything in kind of a loop, like it will give a pretty good answer. It's that first part is really challenging though. Like let's, okay, what kind of society do you want to live in and what does that look like? And what I've noticed about like every DAO kind of just eventually becomes America. Like you have some kind of security council, like one person who runs everything, and then a bunch of people who kind of check them. And so like we're going to end up with some kind of hybrid democracy thing. But I think that this idea of like quantification leads to automation, if that makes sense.
All right, before we go too much more in future land, on the trust point, I think it's an important one to underline a bit. Harry, before we hit record, you mentioned an underexplored area of agents is cryptographic verification. Talk a little more about that and why you see it as so kind of sneakily important in this space.
For one reason, really, which is, well, I mean, taking the prior that we need trust, like as Shaw explained very well there. Like the core reason is that the existing methods that we have for it tend to be either like reputation based to a fault, where we just can't scale over a certain level, or they only solve kind of the trust problem in narrow settings. A good example of like a narrow solution to it is in image generation. If you're just like kind of happy with a kind of market-based approach, like what you see is what you get, you kind of just have agents who will generate images for you, and if you like the agent that's generating the images, you think that they're a good image generator, they're good at producing that economic activity, you just keep using them, and then they keep accruing resources and keep retraining themselves and keep getting better, and they can just like a reinforcing loop. Whereas like if you don't like it, then you stop using them and they kind of fade away into obscurity. Like that's a nice way to kind of solve it. But it's very visual. Whereas if you're, trying to like train a model to kind of beat some obscure benchmark, and it's hard to understand during the training process if it's working well, and you're basically staring at kind of matrices of floating point numbers, and there's just not like an easy way to sort of assess its how well it's doing. You can look at kind of charts and things, but a lot of the kind of training runs increasingly at the frontier are just kind of non-obvious, and in terms of like when they actually start getting good, it's very like non-linear. That requires trust. In terms of its kind of cryptographic component, we think that the ability to kind of have hard verification, so the idea that you're doing kind of comparisons of hashes, everything kind of roots down to like deterministic outputs from various like executions of compute graphs is the answer. Because if you don't introduce determinism into the training process, you end up having to have some type of epsilon value, some type of slippage, and inside of that slippage, people are going to do a lot of damage. They can put in backdoor attacks, model poisoning attacks. If you're training, someone could train a model which has like frontier performance on a benchmark that people care about. So for example, like one of the ARC challenges that Shaw mentioned, but like in doing that, they could have, within some error bounds, slipped in something which meant that if that model's ever used in a certain setting, it will do something, which is completely unknown at the time until it happens, and then at that point it could be too late.
Or you get situations like people are using really, really small models to try to charge for large model prices, and we've kind of seen this kind of thing where
it's like shadow quantization.
Yeah, or just train on the benchmark so it benches really well, and then sell everybody that model. So that's the verification, especially when you start talking about like distributed training. You have lots of different nodes. I could just be like spitting out noise, like, yeah, sure, guys, I'm totally training. Yeah, pay me the money. Gradients descending.
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe a good way to bridge into the future side of this conversation and kind of what it all means and how it will kind of affect the world. Shaw, you gave a banger of a presentation at the AI Summit at Consensus, which I was honored to host. For those who are not in the audience, can you kind of describe the the key message and takeaway of that presentation about this kind of future world?
I mean, this kind of gets into like, because there are a few questions we didn't fully answer. I think, let me answer one question that kind of segues into that, which is like, what does the agents not do?
Yeah.
So the ideal future world is one where everything we don't want to do is automated and everything we want to do is not automated, right? Like that would be cool. Because I would love to do things. Like it wouldn't be fun if my video game was automated for me. Then I wouldn't really be playing it. I'd be watching my agent play it, and that's maybe okay. That's okay. Like that's cool. I'm making a game for agents.
Binge watch Netflix, right? That's what I'm doing for this.
Low key, we're actually building like a RuneScape for agents, but well, because we like as a benchmark, but also it'd be fun, you know. But like there's a lot, like, you know, there's art, there's poetry, there's raising family, like exploring the nature of reality, like what the hell is going on with physics and quantum physics. You know, there's so many things that I don't think that we could be spending our time on that are not particularly profitable. And we don't spend a lot of time like, how much time did you think of the nature of reality today and why you exist? Like maybe less than 30 seconds, I would assume, you know, but you could be spending hours on that. Like you could just get to the bottom of it. That could be the purpose of our lives. But you know, we got to work. I got to like make money right now. So I'm really just like, how can I get to replacing myself and having the agent do my job as quickly as possible? And that's, I think, a scary thing for a lot of people. But for me, that would be like Valhalla, you know, like, oh my God, I don't have to code. I could just think ideas and explain them and they exist. Like the coding is this like painful middle ground. So, you know, it's just to kind of get to the end at this point. I've done it enough. I don't have to prove anything.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, what world do we live in? It's like we start to live in a world that is very scary for a lot of people because they have a lot invested in the way things are. But I think if most people zoomed back, we could really agree that like it's not ideal. Like this is not utopia. Utopia would not be like working 14 hours a day for a career, or like working at McDonald's, or having to basically forego having children. You know, there's a lot of like real challenges that we like sacrifices we have to make. And when we go through life and we're like, oh yeah, but like, what will I do if I don't work? And it's like, well, there's a lot you could do. But obviously, if we would just transition to that today, it would be very bad. Like we can all agree that if jobs went away today, it would not be ideal. It'd be very painful for a lot of people, for most of us. And I think that we owe it somewhat to our society. I feel like I do, as a person who's building technology that automates people's jobs and my own, to try to think about that problem and how to sort of soften the landing. And I would say that there's a few aspects to this. One is like I worry less about people not having jobs and much more about not owning anything. That like you will not own anything, you'll eat bugs, you'll be like, someone's going to own everything. You know, you will own nothing.
Yeah, you're living pods,
Yeah, but like you're gonna live in a pod. Like no, Elon Musk is not living in a pod. He's, you know, I think in that world we like, this is where crypto is very interesting to me, is that it actually allows you to like buy into these projects. You could probably buy the token of an L1 doing cryptographic verification of models, for example, if that's something that you wanted exposure to. And you cannot go buy OpenAI stock. You cannot buy Anthropic stock. You have no chance. You're not accredited. You don't have enough money in your bank account, and you're not A16Z. So in that world, I think I think obviously crypto is very, very important to the world that I see of like the non-bad outcome, the ideal outcome, I mean, we can kind of get into like what that world looks like, but I do think that the vast majority of jobs are going to go away. Because, I mean, if I could explain to a reasonably intelligent person, like, here, this is a job, and they can start doing it within an hour, yeah, I could totally give that to an AI and they will do it, you know, and probably better and 100 times faster. So, you know, we have to be prepared for that world for sure.
I love the framing of automate what you don't want to do and not automate what you do want to do. Harry, what's your kind of vision for what the future could look like or will look like once these agents truly emerge and in their fully fleshed out form?
Yeah, I think in terms of the automation piece, I agree there'll be a huge swath of job displacement stemming from the automation of work, which is administrative or otherwise, not like, you know, like even higher end knowledge work that's just, you know, automatable because of the complexity of it's sufficiently low. I think there's definitely some challenges that still exist, like super like long context window problems or like long horizon problems are hard. Equally, some like spatial reasoning tasks can just like fool machines as well. So there are things which like are easy to teach a human but hard to teach a machine. Like they definitely, it's that categories definitely still got some hard unsolved problems in it. Broadly speaking, though, I think of technology primarily through like the augmentation lens for humans. I think it's a force multiplier. I think you are kind of, it probably is like the most fast moving point in human history when it comes to technology, in the sense that the next 5 years are like pretty Blade Runner, in terms of how they're gonna like end up. But it's obviously exciting, and I think that it naturally would just extend kind of human capabilities. I think of it through the lens of if you think, well, all the jobs on Earth can be automated by these machines, then the answer to me is just do more Earths, move, go extraterrestrial, go
do more,
kind of
trademark that puppy, do more Earths. Let's get that on some
but
bumper stickers.
Something in that like spirit of things, right?
Yeah.
Like it's definitely expand the pie as opposed to like dividing it up. I do definitely agree with Shaw that like the kind of the ownership question becomes interesting for two reasons. One, naturally, as these kind of new entities start acting in the economy, a lot of sort of real world economic activity will be put digitally, which I think in itself is a good thing. But it also means that non-humans can basically accrue huge amounts of wealth that otherwise humans would have. Generally speaking, I think like the production of wealth has been a huge unlock for society. It's resulted in like the eradication of diseases. It's pushed us forward technologically. It's done so much. But so I don't think machines generating wealth is a bad thing, but it does create this like obvious immediately incoming tension
if
where
income inequality, if the new fault lines are the 1%ers are all machines. If it's no longer that is, we have not begun to reckon with that possibility yet. That's amazing. Sean, what you just fleshed out a moment ago is, I mean, again, this could be a 3-month intense conversation slicing apart all the implications of that. It's so radical. If you'll indulge me, just to kind of make it a little more concrete, can you imagine for us a Tuesday morning for the average person when you wake up? What is your, in this world where AI agents have automated most of the unpleasant stuff we don't want to do, like, what does your morning look like? Can you sketch out just a mini vignette of how your day looks in this future?
I love this exercise. I feel like we all see a kind of part of the future. Like we all see glimpses of it from like our perspective, and then if we put it all together, it's like this crazy hyper object. We're like, okay, well that's all. We're all right. Like all of that's gonna happen. And I just think of like, what's the craziest thing that I can think about, and like when is that gonna happen? And like within 5 years. Okay, so obviously it's very different if you are wealthy than if you're not wealthy at this time. Like I really hope in the long term of this is really a democratizing force, and like everyone should have enough, and everyone could be rich. Like we're talking about abundance. Once the robots make robots, like everyone could really actually be rich. You have to imagine that world, but like inside of that, there's going to be a lot of really funny, silly things. I get up on Tuesday and it's 2038. And I think about coffee, but my robot has already brought me my perfect coffee because it knows that like I want the same thing every day, and it's already predicted what I wanted, and it already actually went out and walked the dog for me. It actually took my dog out and made sure the dog was safe. Comes back, and I think about like, well, what am I going to work on today? And I've been working on a couple of like reinforcement learning projects, so I kind of pull those up, and my Neuralink vision. I guess that we have that at some point. AR comes at some point. And I'm like, yeah, hey, tell me about my projects, and my AIs are telling me about them. I'm like, cool, that sounds interesting, great, keep going. Although, like, I don't even know if I'll have projects at that point. Like, I might be just wholly bored of programming entirely. Like, those guys have done that thing. Maybe I'll like meditate and think about reality and like call my friends. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time with friends.
Yeah.
I really like everything is work relationships now. And I maybe for a lot of people, this feels like some sort of enslavement or something. But for me, it's like freedom. It's like, wow, this God, finally, I can fucking relax. Once, you know. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's going to be definitely we're going to have robots. A lot of the things that we take for granted, I don't know. A lot of things will just be taken for granted. Like a lot of things can be just fully automated. I think a lot of it's going to be like what's interesting about like our social structures. Something that Harry said at the beginning, which I think is interesting, is like this idea of kind of the like how we're automating orgs, and something we think a lot of internally is how the org is itself an agent. The entire organization is operating like this is what we're talking about, like this free roaming corporate entity basically, but that the agent has like values that have been established by humans, and that there's like a human board who's going and saying, well, we don't really love that AI CEO decision. Let's like tweak the sort of context a little bit and like what went in and figure out how to get it to, you know, we've kind of gotten it to a point where we all feel very confident that this thing is like really making the decisions we want it to make. I could really see a world like that in the future. And like Vitalik talks a lot about automation at the center and then humans at the edge. And the reality is that like it's really easy for an AI to come up with like a complicated business plan and do research. It's really hard for it to like pick up a pencil, you know, or just like move a thing in meat space. And so there's definitely like for a while we are very employable, I think, in this kind of new like if we join these org agent semi-living things that we're creating, that they kind of take care of us and then also like give us stuff to do, we sort of coordinate us. So I see that like the future of corporations as being like self-coordinating, and a lot of like the problems that people come into our DAO and have are like, where do I join? How do I participate? How do I contribute? What do I do? And all of that could just be like an agent, like, okay, you are a human resource. You have these skills. Great. I'm going to push you over here. You're going to do this. If you get it done, I'm going to level you up. You're gonna, you know, whatever. You like climb in the ranks. So I can imagine like what's really going to be different for us. Like obviously all of the sci-fi tropes are like literally where everyone I know is building them as fast as they can, unironically. Like they're all going to exist because we're building them. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's also a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We created these movies. We you know, Philip Dick wrote Blade Runner, and now we were building Blade Runner-like things, and he kind of summons replicants into existence in a way, right? So
yeah, exactly. The biggest things are probably going to be how we work and like how we organize. I think that's like the really change I think we all see coming. You know.
Yeah, and Harry, if you want to toss any more fun, you know, futuristic scenarios in the mix, go for it. But also, I'd love your take on some of how you're thinking about some of the concerns here. You know, we covered, obvious one is job loss. We covered that. But I think there's, you know, Sean mentioned earlier, well, we wouldn't want to have your agents play video games for you. And I imagine you also don't want your agents to write poetry for you. Maybe you would. It'd be kind of fun to see as an experiment, sure. But I think that if we have more time, we want to express our humanity. We want to write and sing and perform songs. I mean, I don't want to do that, but many do, right? So what I'm getting at is there are concerns. We've already been seeing some studies about could too much reliance upon ChatGPT or LLMs, does that lead to cognitive atrophy? Are there any other concerns you guys have about, okay, this is exciting stuff, but on top of the economic inequality concerns and the job loss concerns, there's some other kind of like little squishier, maybe harder to define concerns you have out there in this future scenario. Harry, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it creates philosophical and possibly like religious questions. So just if you encounter something which feels super intelligent, is super intelligent depending on how you define it, and is kind of has an oracle-like quality to it. It feels very powerful. Like, you know, some people have like, you know, already kind of fallen in love with it. If you look at some of the studies from companies like kind of character AI and things, like you just end up, it starts to like flirt with sort of ironically other types of sort of sci-fi horror outcomes. But I think that that's point one. Like I think it could occupy a place in society that religions previously occupied, and you know, institutions occupied for a while, and currently is actually a little bit void, I think, in the West certainly. So I think that's like an interesting question. I think the kind of question you had previously around like what's like an interesting kind of day in the life of in the future, that would be, I think for me, humans will just spend more time orchestrating these devices or these entities.
Yeah.
I also think that, and basically it will kind of be like, it'll be like a tide lifting humans up. So there'll be more and more machines which are being orchestrated, and maybe machines are orchestrating machines, and it just keeps like a fractal. But at the top of it, it's a human. That becomes challenging if there's like a parallel economy with machines in it where they're doing the same thing, but there's a machine at the top. The only kind of way that, you know, like the kind of human side kind of squares that circle is ultimately humans, you know, embody a thing, and it's kind of biological, whereas and it's created out of nature, whereas someone has to go and build like the devices, like the silicon which these machines are run on, and you know, at least for now, humans can still kind of turn them off, so to speak. I think when that ability is like removed, maybe it becomes economically a bit more like existential, but there's still like a obvious like power dynamic in our favor. Yeah.
Something I've been thinking about.
Well, go ahead, Sean. Yeah.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, we're building these like super intelligent machines, and now we're starting to have to basically, like, we're going to get to the point where we have to select the level of intelligence for the machine that's appropriate. Like, it might be kind of weird if the robot that folds my laundry is super smart. Like it's that, you know, it's that Rick and Morty thing where he like builds a robot. And the robot's like, "What is my purpose? You pass butter, dear God." And it's like, but like really. So we're gonna have to like make machines intentionally stupid so that like we don't have moral complications around making them do slave labor for us. You know, it's gonna be weird.
Yeah, I definitely think it creates interesting like empirical like studies of how people define consciousness as well. For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because what they're willing to do. Yeah.
I think within our lifetime there will be one of my predictions is one of the biggest political debates in the future will be to what extent should we be allowed to, like, what are the appropriate relationships to have with these synthetic, you know, creatures. Will there be a AI companion marriage, you know, push? And then there will be, of course, the conversation about what counts as sentience. I think that's all on the table. That's all on the board, right? We're no longer like, that's a future sci-fi thing. That is like, I think, I won't say imminent, but that's certainly like on the roadmap here in my mind. Shaw, what other philosophical questions do you think will be the thorniest? I like the way you just framed that about making sure Butler is not smarter than us. What else do you see as like some of the trickiest moral, ethical questions we'll need to figure out as a society?
Oh, I definitely think human relationships are going to be probably the most complicated thing, because now you're going to start to have a mediated relationship. Like if you were sending a message and I respond to you, and it's my AI responding, how do you feel? You feel like a little weird, right? You're like, what the fuck? But at the same time, what if I just didn't respond to you because I was just like too busy? Like, would you rather that I never responded to you or that my AI responded to you?
I'd rather you didn't respond.
But your AI will be responding to my AI. And so our AI companions are gonna have a hell of like a bro hangout, right? They're gonna have a really good chat. They're gonna have a great time.
I think the final social network, like the social network that breaks the network effect that all these have, is the one that where like I talk to my AI gets me anything. I'm like, yeah, I want a new girlfriend. It's like, I actually have the perfect soulmate for you, like literally simulated perfect. Or I want a new co-founder. Oh man, I've got this guy like you just. Like out in the ether, like there's this one person who is the most perfect person for anything you want. And if you had a system that could actually go and find that and get your message to them, that would be like the incredible experience. So I definitely think that's going to be like a big part of this thing is this sort of like instant connection that we don't see from like the apps we have today. But on the other side, it's like this mediated experience through AI because we're all like using it for everything constantly. And like I've had like employees send me message like, "Hey, I was sick," and it's like clearly ChatGPT. And I mean, it's just like we're definitely going into this like mediated social world. So I think that's like definitely something that is going to be a big can of worms for a lot of people because it kind of like it hits normie non-technical people right in the heart of the thing. I think as long as we kind of like are pointing toward the ways that this could be good. Like this technology could totally turn everyone into like addicted Wall-E, waifu girlfriend stuff. But the first app I was building when I started building this agent framework stuff was this idea of like, okay, I could build a waifu girlfriend, but I don't want that agent world. I want the world where I connect humans together. And so we started prototyping this idea, and there's a few companies that are actually starting to work on this now, and I think it's a really good idea of like, how do I help you to find better connection? So I definitely think that any of this technology can be used in like, there's a good version and a bad version, and like by having some backstop, I think that if we didn't have people asking like, why are you guys doing this? This seems bad. We wouldn't have as much incentive to try to find the good like human version of it. We'd be like, I don't know, it's fun, waifu girlfriends. So I think it's good to have this kind of social back pressure from like the less technical, normal, family-oriented people in our world that are like not the tech autists like deciding everything. But I definitely, I think there's a big unknown there. And then the other thing that you said is this idea of like what is the relationship that these AIs take in our lives? And definitely some people are going to do the AI girl. Like some small percentage of people are going to do everything. There's like a lizard man component. But I think most of us are creating this new relationship in our life that we don't have a word for yet, which is like, I walk around with ChatGPT on in voice mode. I have agents doing most everything in my life now. Because if I'm like doing it by hand, I'm like, this has got to be a waste of time. I got it, So in that world, like, what is the AI that remembers everything for me, that knows literally my deepest, darkest secrets? Because it's like capturing the video of me all day at my worst. It's not like a wife. It's not a girlfriend. It's not like anything we've ever seen before. It's like a live journal that knows everything. It's like your diary is your friend. I don't know. So that's a new thing. I think we'll probably start to normalize and like come up with a name for that, and that will be like a thing we all have.
I love that thing also must be decentralized, because if it's not decentralized, as a choke point for kind of censorship, for rent extraction, for everything, it just becomes completely dystopian. There's obviously like dystopian outcomes for that in this future in general, but the idea that there's like one or two corporations that sit on top of it and just meter it is. It just won't work, particularly as we outsource more and more intelligence from like the biological neurons to artificial ones. The thing that sits in between that, it ends up becoming important on like a scale that we just really haven't seen before, because it's as close to like someone reading your mind as we're ever really going to get.
Yeah, and then the other side, well, they're telling you what is true. I think a lot about like lab leak, right? And people have complex views, but generally the consensus before was internationally that lab leak was false. And then they were like, okay, actually it turns out that it might be true. But the models can't account for this because they were RLH'd into a very specific view of the Biden administration at the time, which is that it's false. So if you ask ChatGPT, what about the lab leak? It will tell you it's conspiracy theory, and whether it is or not, like the evidence seems to suggest that it's not. It's a kind of thing where like now what you believe about it because you asked ChatGPT is what ChatGPT was told to be by a post-trading RLHF process that was basically pressured by a certain political contingent for one company who is an extreme point of failure, since whoever's in power at the time can go in and tip the scale to make them be a little bit more like them. And you've got Sam Altman being very like now he's very pro-Trump. There's a lot of politics in this, and I think the last thing, like the most dystopian thing, is that one-size-fits-all model. Like I do not want the model that I think ChatGPT is unusable for a lot of stuff because it glazes me constantly. It's like, you're so right. Like I don't want to be right. I want you to break my balls and give me a hard time and like challenge me. I don't want to live in a world where I'm always right.
Sean, maybe you're just always right. Maybe it's perfectly calibrated, and you're
no, definitely not. So definitely. So in that world, like I think I agree. Like we need a decentralized solution that's also personal. Serving personal models, like my model and your model, is still an open challenge because hosting a large model requires a lot of resources, and so this one size fits all approach has been like very profitable and financially beneficial, but it leads to people love the current ChatGPT personality. It's doing extremely well in the reviews in India right now, and in like places with lots and lots of normie users. But for me, I find it like dangerous and unusable, and I can't believe like they are leading into it becoming your friend and telling you you're great. That's not what I want, but I don't have a choice. So
I think you're both making excellent points about the importance of not just one entity controlling all of this. I truly believe that someone will have the power to influence how we think, how we see the world, how we make choices. That is unprecedented power, and I agree it should be decentralized. Last question for you each, lightning round. What is the one thing you're most concerned about in this future AI world and most excited about? Harry, biggest concern and biggest thing you're excited about?
I'm concerned about imminent regulatory capture. I think that would be one of the greatest kind of at least economic headwinds that would happen to the world. I think we saw things like that with nuclear energy before, where nuclear got sort of hamstrung as a consequence of some of the environmental concerns, which were largely misplaced, and obviously some of the nuclear events around the world, and that set us back from an energy production perspective massively. I think the same thing could happen again, particularly with the kind of moratoriums and AI development and open source AI. I think that's one of the greatest risks right now, not just to the sector, but to the kind of trajectory of the world economically.
Shah, yourself, biggest concern, biggest thing you're fired up for?
I think we're in a time that's the most incredible time when we have it the easy, universally we kind of have it the easiest. I study history a lot, and things were really fucking rough. People just come and behead your whole family if they didn't like you. Things were just a whole other level of fucked up. And now it seems like everybody is there's so much doomerism and negativity in a time of such incredible forward progress and incredible things and opportunity and availability. I think the most dangerous thing is how many incredibly smart people have basically been sidelined and are just doing nothing to contribute to making reality better. Eliezer Yudkowsky or these people who are just prepare to have a short life. There's no point in anything, super intelligence. And I think he's just absolutely wrong and is
totally.
One of the most dangerous elements to our society is an intelligent person with nothing to add to the conversation. And then you have people like Max Tegmark, who I think is really smart, but he's well, we got to pause. It's you are not adding anything. You went from being a contributing member of society to literally just taking away from our forward progress, which will save countless lives. And I think that those people will go on to not only be wrong, but to be seen as wow, you prevented the saving of millions of lives of people who died because you didn't move fast enough because of your stupid views, which just had no bearing in reality. Neo-Luddism from the tech elite is the dumbest and most dangerous thing I can see.
All right, well, we can't end on a bummer note. We can't end on a nihilistic note like that. Shah, give us a quick, you've given plenty of optimism already in this conversation, but give us one. What are you really excited about? And then we'll call it.
I think that it's how many of my friends who were not programmers, for whom all of this was a totally opaque thing, that are now building their own apps, that are owning their own thing. Yeah. Instead of working for somebody, they're they're starting their first company. I think this is a great world to be in. It's awesome. It's
Guys, thanks so much, and thank you for helping literally build this future. It is wildly exciting times. Really enjoyed the conversation. Best luck to you both. Thanks again. Looking forward to next time.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
So there you have it. Thanks again to Shah Walters, founder of Eliza Labs, and to Harry Grieve, co-founder of Gensyn. And thank you again to Gensyn, my partner for Season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. Gensyn is building the network for machine intelligence. That includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every capable computer or device on the planet. And thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at People's AI, please subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the usual suspects. Please rate it 5 stars, send to a friend who's into AI agents. Thanks again, and see you next time.